super celebrity right here.
Definitely is.
Yeah, Aaron Sorkin, one of the Academy Award winner, one of the great writers, and I would say, Aaron, one of the great thinkers in show business. And I hate to even call it show business because between all the things you've done, from A Few Good Men through Newsroom to this new film that we're about to talk about, to me, you're fascinated, obviously, with how people know what they know, right?
Yeah, well, that was just a really nice introduction. I'm going to move to Chicago.
We'll have
find an
you
apartment
here.
here.
We'd love it if you move here.
But it seems like that's the what do we know and telling both sides of a story, which is, I think, the most amazing stuff. If you go back to Colonel Jessup, right, from A Few Good Men, and you wanted to tell that side, that speech that he makes, people go, my God, he's right. You do need people like him.
Yeah, that was really satisfying when he would give that speech, and people would say, God, he's got a point. I love both sides of the argument. First of all, if you have one strong person and one straw man, there's not going to be much drama there. So you want to build up both sides, and I don't care that when I pose a question, I don't care that much about the answer. Just that it's an interesting question, and you can look at it from both sides. By the way, sometimes there's more than two sides. Sometimes there's 3 or 5 or 10. Richard Roeper is, of course, with us as well, and let's talk about this new film, because there's a ton of buzz. Steve Jobs, it's a biopic and stuff, right? Writing a story about a guy that is so well known, and especially by fans, right? I mean, those may I use the term tech geeks? They were
super fans,
the cult
for
of
sure.
Steve, and this is I think the 6th movie, right? Already that we've had.
It is, and in fact, there's going to be an opera. The Santa Fe Opera has just commissioned an opera about Steve Jobs that'll be out in 2017. But here's the thing: this isn't a biopic. The traditional cradle to grave structure, where you land on the character's greatest hits along the way. This isn't it. It doesn't cover his childhood. What it is, the entire movie is just 3 scenes. 3 scenes that are each in real time. Real time means that 40 minutes for you in the audience is the same as 40 minutes for the characters on the screen. And they each of the 3 scenes take place in the moments backstage leading up to one of his product launches. And through those scenes, we just dramatize the friction that he had in his life with 5 different people, including his eldest daughter, including Woz, including John Scully, who was his boss for a while. We got to know Steve a little bit.
Yeah, it's a fascinating structure, Aaron, and a daring one. And first of all, thank you for not doing the traditional biopic, because if I sit through one more movie where we start off with the sepia tone image of the kid having that moment in the store where wow, you'll never learn how to be a calculator, that'll never happen in this lifetime, and all that.
It's funny, but that's the example you just gave is exactly what I was thinking I didn't want to do. That everybody's going to be coming into this movie expecting to see a little boy and his father looking into an electronics store. He'll have some kind of early failure, and then he's going to meet a guy, and what's your name? I'm Steve Wozniak. That structure is very familiar to audiences. I also didn't think it would be something that I'd be very good at. I'm a playwright by nature. I'm kind of faking my way through movies and television. And when you bring home a new puppy, they tell you to get a crate that's just big enough for the puppy to be able to turn around in, but no bigger, because they like that sense of security.
Right.
I'm the same way. And I just compared myself to a cute puppy. I did. But
there'll be a treat for you at the end of the interview.
You were here for that, yeah.
I like claustrophobic spaces. Yeah. I like compressed periods of time, especially when there's a ticking clock. And I love being behind the scenes, and in this case, literally behind the scenes at these sort of grand theater palaces in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, the great thing, though, is even though it, as you mentioned, I mean, it's, as usual with Aaron Sorkin's work, the dialogue is very dense and very rich, but it's a very kinetic film, because you got Danny Boyle directing, of course, who's done stuff like Slumdog Millionaire and knows how to really make these things moves, and he shoots each segment with different, 16 millimeter, and then we go to 35 millimeter, and then we go to digital. So there's a lot of movement and action in this, even though it's in a confined space.
That's exactly right, because what I described sounds pretty boring, but you bring
what I described sounds very interesting. It opens Friday.
You bring in Danny in, who's a visual master, our editor Elliot Graham, the composer, and it looks like a jailbreak. It's like a bank robbery. Right. The whole thing. There's just a lot of, you said, kinetic excitement to it.
people feel so strongly about Steve Jobs, and they hail him as a hero and God in some ways. He transformed communication for us. I mean, there had to be so much. Well, I want to ask: was there any pressure to you knew how ever you portrayed him, the man in this movie, it was going to be criticized and loved and picked apart, and everyone's going to look at it.
Yeah, there's something really liberating when you finally come to grips with the fact that you're going to write something and there are going to be people who are going to hate it. Nobody is going to love it. Nobody's going to love it. Plenty of people love it. I mean, not everybody is going to love it. But here's the thing. There are people... Now, the movie's only opened in 4 theaters right now. 2 in New York and 2 in Los Angeles. It'll open in some more theaters this coming Friday, and then it opens wide a week after that on the 26th. But people who haven't seen it are assuming that it's something that it's not. So if you go online, you'll see Samsung owners who hate iPhone owners saying, God, another movie that's just celebrating Steve Jobs, and you kind of want to yell at your computer screen. It's not that movie. It's not anything you've seen before.
Well, it's interesting, too, because there's been some criticism from Steve Jobs' widow and Tim Cook, who's now the head of Apple, and they're obviously protecting someone they loved very dearly, but people who they've not seen the movie, as far as I know, right?
Yeah, it's important to note that Lorene, Mrs. Jobs, Tim Cook, the current CEO of Apple, Johnny Ive, who's very close to Steve Jobs, and the chief designer there, have had some words to say about the movie. None of them have seen the movie. However, the people close to Steve Jobs who have seen the movie, Steve Wozniak, Andy Hertzfeld, Joanna Hoffman, Andrea Cunningham, his publicist, the people close to Steve who have seen the movie say just the opposite, that something has been captured in this film that they haven't seen before in the other films, and that really makes them feel that Steve is up there. Probably has a lot to do, I'm sorry, with Michael Fassbender gives an extraordinary performance.
Right,
Yeah.
but Wozniak said something to you about this, didn't he? About how you wrote him? Listen, Woz has been very complimentary, but here's a pretty good example of fiction versus reality. There's a scene in the third act between Woz, who's played by Seth Rogen in the movie, and Steve, who's played by Michael Fassbender, where Woz says some things to Steve that have been building up for years. Woz never said those things, and he says that he would never be able to say those things. He's just not the kind of person who could say those things. But I knew that he felt those things. It was pretty clear after spending hours and hours with Woz that he felt those things. Mm-hmm. So I had him say those things. And I'm comfortable as an artist doing a painting as opposed to a photograph. And that's what this is. That these, like I said, it's 3 acts that are in real time, and in each of them, Steve confronts the same 5 people over and over. Once in 1984 before the Mac launch, once in 1988 before the launch of his new company Next, and once 10 years later in 1998 with his return to Apple. Obviously, Steve didn't have confrontations with the same 5 people 40 minutes before each one of his product launches. That is a fiction. The content of those confrontations, though, is real.
Well, we've all the people here. Anna worked as a television reporter and anchor for years and years in Rosebud, behind the camera, in front of the camera. The same thing with Newsroom, and we were all 3 like groupies for that show, because
Newsroom.
a lot of
really
it,
nice.
a lot of it was. God, I wish I had said that when the executive producer would kill a story, or when a reporter would come in and say, we got to run with this. I mean, and a lot of, I think your greatest writing is people saying, like, I wish I'd said that. And I believe Steve's own daughter has said the same thing about some of those
yeah,
things.
that's right. It was really interesting. I got to spend a lot of time with Lisa Brennan Jobs, Steve's eldest daughter. This whole thing is based on an authorized biography by Walter Isaacson, but Lisa was unwilling to speak to Walter because her father was alive at the time. Fortunately, she was willing to speak to me. And when the script was done, I didn't show it to anybody except the people who were making the movie, obviously. But Lisa would send me emails saying, just please tell me that I'm not a weak character in the movie, and I would assure her that even she's played by 3 different actresses at 5, 9, and 19, and I would assure her that even the 5-year-old version of her is very strong, not at all weak. But I just to give her a sense of what it was, I sent her just one speech that Lisa has in the third act, where she tells off her father. And she wrote back saying, God, if I had only managed to say that to him. I said something like that to him 3 years later when I was 22, but boy, I wish I had said it. And so the movie doesn't pretend to be a piece of journalism, recording the events that actually happened. Like I said, it's a painting rather than a photograph.
So can I go to newsroom for just a second here?
Yeah, sure.
Because we, as Richard mentioned, all 3 of us threw ourselves totally into that.
Thank you.
There's a moment in there, and I worked in talk. I've worked in talk radio for 27 years or something now, and there are moments that in conservative media where, and I thought it was an excellent choice on your part to have your TV anchor be a card-carrying Republican, gun-toting, conservative guy, but he was a prosecutor who wanted to tell the truth.